What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the #Black Professionals Project. My name is Kenton Hipsher, of course. I am the CEO and founder of the project. And our mission is to educate and inspire Black and Brown youths via the faces and stories of Black and Brown professionals. And so with that, today we have another wonderful, beautiful, experienced professional herself, Miss Candace.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being on.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So if those of you who don't know, Candace attended Rose-Hulman University, and basically she was my mentor while I was there. My NSBE mentor, if y'all know what that is, National Society of Black Engineers. She was my mentor during that time. So we've been close ever since then, and I'm happy that she can come back and catch up with me and also share her story with you guys. So hopefully she can tell you a little bit more about her career and what she does and help inspire some young boys and girls to, follow in her footsteps and pursue a career similar to hers. So without further ado, Candace, can you tell the people, what it is you do and what your industry is?
So I am a surgical neurophysiologist, and I work in the healthcare field, specifically in the operating room. The hospital I work at now is McLeod in Florence, South Carolina, but I travel and I go to lots of hospitals around the country.
Oh, you heard that? That sounds like Black excellence to me.
Black girl magic.
So about your profession, being a neurophysiologist, all fancy with your titles and stuff. So before we get into your career, tell the people, also a little bit about you, your background. So how you describe your ethnicity and where you're from and where you currently are working.
All right. So I am African American. I am 29 years of age. I was born in Gary, Indiana. Mm-hmm. I was raised in Griffith, Indiana, which is like 10 minutes from Gary, Indiana. I currently live in Florence, South Carolina, which is like an hour west of Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And my background, like Ken said, I went to Rose-Hulman, and I have a bachelor's of science in biomedical engineering with a concentration in materials.
Gotcha. Okay. So, moving then into your career, what were some of the steps that you took along your education to get you to where you are today? For example, did you attend any programs in high school that helped you make your decision to go into STEM? Why did you choose your major at Rose-Hulman?
So I would say in middle school and high school, math and science were always my favorite subjects, whether it was algebra or statistics or chemistry or biology. I loved science and math. In high school, I was on math bowl, so I was a math nerd. And I was also a part of the group called the Leaders of Tomorrow, which was a Chicago-based group, and it took like our young youth, like inner city youth in Chicago and Gary, and it exposed you to like different colleges. We went like to visit college tours. It exposed you to different majors and got a lot of experience doing that. So I absolutely love that program. My mentor, her name was Amelia. I absolutely love Amelia. Hey, girl. When I met her in high school, she was everything to me. She came to my graduation from Rose-Hulman, so she's been there with me through all kinds of things. And so I absolutely love her. So I knew that I always wanted to do something in math and science. I knew my dad played a really big part in me becoming an engineer and going to Rose-Hulman. And he was like, if you love math and science, girl, engineering. And I was like, okay, I hadn't really heard much about it. Of course, like you hear the typical, my first original idea was I was going to go to med school. I was like, med school. But the thing with me with med school was it's not very math heavy. So I was like, you would get the most of the biology part, but not like the math and the engineering side of it. So he discovered biomedical engineering. He discovered Rose-Hulman. I went to visit Rose-Hulman, and I was like, oh, this is it. Like, I'm going to Rose-Hulman. Because I was originally, I had decided to go to the University of Illinois. And I was riding with the Final Line now. I was like, woo, yeah, Final Line now. I had aunts that graduated from there. But when I went to visit Rose-Hulman, I was like, this is where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. So I went there. I majored in biomedical engineering, which was the best decision I have ever made. I would not take it back for anything. And I chose a materials concentration just because it focused on human tissues, the human body, as opposed to instrumentation and like hardware, implants, and prosthesis.
Okay, so you still got that medical application and learning more about the human body, but then also you still got to crunch some numbers and do some science and math on that end.
I know how to program a little bit.
Get you one who can do it all. She could just do it all, basically is what she's saying.
I do most of it.
So I totally agree with you. I think, when I was growing up, I wasn't a part of any like STEM groups or anything like that, but I had a really strong passion for science and math. I love both of those things. And so like you, I came into college thinking like med school. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a doctor. But the thing for me was I did the rotations and I just didn't like, how you have to deal with all the administrative stuff when it comes to being a doctor. That is a side that's often not talked about, and hopefully we will have a real doctor on later to talk about those things. But it wasn't very motivating for me. I'm more of a people person. I like working with people, and so that's why I chose to go a different route. But it's good to see, that we had sort of a similar mindset, and Rose was able to prepare us for whatever career track that we decided to take. So tell people what it is, to be Candace on a day-to-day basis. What does a day in the life of like a neurophysiologist look like?
It's really a free fall. I usually wake up around like 5 a.m. Surgeries usually start, of course, early in the morning so they can get as many in as they can, get everybody prepared, get everybody done. I use my first surgery is usually around like 7:30 a.m. And so I try to get there an hour before so I can have time to set up. And so what I do is they bring the patient back. I do a pre-op exam where I ask them certain questions that could affect what I'm doing for my job. They answer the yes and no questions, give me a history about their health. They are put to sleep, and I have these tiny needles that I put, depending on the muscle groups or wherever they're working at, I have little needles that I place everywhere. From there, I can hook them up to my computer, and I run signals. So I can either stimulate their brain and read from different muscle groups, or I can stimulate distal nerves, and I can read their cortex. And so the information that I get comes out in graphs, and I can interpret that data to give the surgeon feedback about what's happening in the surgery, and if he's causing any deficits, if he's irritating any nerves, if he's stretching any nerves, or it's different stuff like that. Depends on the case. So we cover a lot of cases. So we can do spine surgeries, we do craniotomies, we do facial nerve surgeries, pretty much anything involving the brain or the central nervous system, we're there.
Wow, that's awesome. So you get to be right in the room with the action.
Oh, yes, which is what I have always wanted to do. I've always wanted to work in the OR. And I was like, when I go to med school, I got to go be a surgeon, because I was like, I don't necessarily want to be a doctor. Not that I don't like people, but I want to be where the action is. And so the OR was always like, I was obsessed with the OR. And so to be able to be in the OR and reach that dream and not have to spend 20 years of my life and back in school again, it was perfect. So I absolutely love it.
Got you. Yeah, I totally agree. When I did my rotations in the OR in undergraduate, then I was just in love with it. I just love watching everybody do the surgeries and like how everybody's in sync. They all have to know what they're doing, where they're going to be, and what the status of the patient is. So it was really cool and exciting for me as well. And if being a physician was just all that, then I would do it totally, but it's not. There's a lot more.
That's how it is. Either you love the OR or you hate the OR. There's like no in between people that's like, oh, the OR is just okay. Like, no, you have to love it to be in there.
Exactly, because you're in there for a while.
Long time.
Yes, it is a long time. So you got to have comfortable shoes, and you got to be ready to go.
Protein bars. You gotta like the people in the OR, at least know how to deal with them, because you're gonna be in there with them all day. You spend a lot of time with the people in the OR that you work with, like a lot of times more than you spend with your own family. So they become like your family, they become your friends, and it's like you with the camaraderie, and like you're a team with the people in the OR. So I absolutely love it.
Mm-hmm. It's like a more intense episode of Grey's Anatomy happening all right there in the hospital.
And it's funny because I'm like obsessed with Grey's. I'm like a Grey's fanatic. And so when I would watch Grey's, I'm like, there is no way people are at work acting like this. And I'm like, like, okay, y'all really live in this Grey's Anatomy life. Okay.
Hey, they're people just like everybody else.
They are.
But yeah, so even though you have all these great things about your job and it's very exciting and you always have something different going on, what would you say are a couple obstacles that you have to face in your job?
I would say the biggest obstacle that I had to face was before I became a neurophysiologist, I was a biomed tech. And those are the people in hospitals that repair all the hospital equipment. And so it's very heavy and like using tools and like all that kind of stuff. And so for a very long time, I was the only woman. And so I thought going into the OR and becoming a neurophysiologist, since it was more biology heavy, that there'd be more women. So usually I'm the only African-American woman in the room. And a lot of times I'm maybe one or two women in the room at all. So it was difficult. And it took time for me to practice having a voice. Because the personalities that I'm like, of course, it's just a surgeon, like, oh, he's usually in charge of the room. He's usually real pompous. He's running the place. And so I had to become comfortable in having my own voice and like being able to speak up and like just knowing that I'm here for a reason. I have the experience to be here. I have the education to be here. And I'm just as useful as the surgeon is.
You tell them. Those are a lot of things that are difficult for many people in their careers, not just your specific career, but finding your voice, especially in a room full of experts, is really difficult. And it's something that can be overcome, with self-confidence and practice. But it's something that everybody has to deal with. So I definitely, have experienced some of that in my field, especially working in the science industry. Everybody around you is a professional and they all know everything about everything. So, and
that's the thing is like, there are people in their field who seem to know everything about the field, but there's no way that you can know everything about everything. And then I had to learn that it's okay not to know, but you can take the time. And if it's important to you, you'll go find it out. So do the research, educate yourself. Because like sometimes my surgeon will ask me a question and I won't have the answer, but I can get the answer for you if you give me a moment. So it's also a learning process because there are some questions that a surgeon will ask me that he doesn't know the answer to that I know the answer to. So there are some, and that's why it's a complementary kind of a relationship because there's some things I know that you don't know and some things that you know that I don't know. And so if we bring both of together, what we know is better for the patient. It's better to help the patient that we have on the table. So everybody doesn't know everything and that's okay.
Agreed. That's one thing I also had to learn too, having a voice and understanding that you may not be able to have the answer to all the questions, but if you can spend the time and go find the answer and come back, then you still have the value that you feel that you have.
Oh, yeah.
But with those obstacles, there's a lot of ways of overcoming them. So what would be a couple pieces of advice that you would give to, Black and brown youths who are trying to follow in your footsteps or pursue a career similar to yours?
The advice that I would have is just to have personal talks with yourself. Pick a field that you actually love and care about because that way you dedicate yourself to it. And so it won't be something that, I just get up and do every day. So I don't really care to learn more about it. Like, just as you work in a job as opposed to like making it a career, something that you enjoy doing. So pick something that you love doing because in that way, like I find myself reading research articles about spine surgeries all the time just because I enjoy doing it. And so when like article comes up in the discussion, the journal article comes up in the discussion in OR, I've read it, we've talked about it and stuff like that. Also, I would say prepare yourself. So just like when I applied for this career, I was like, I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to be doing what I'm doing to apply for this job. And I was like, I did it anyway. So just prepare yourself. So do a lot of research. Before I became a neurophysiologist, I did months and months of research just to figure out if this is something that I wanted to do, if it meshed with what I wanted to do. One of the biggest things I did was prayed about it, which is how I even came about this job because I was leaving my last job. And so I wanted to be led in the direction and into the field that I felt like God had for me and it was destined for me. because he knows me the best. Like I sometimes I think I want something and it's not really what I need. So that was the biggest thing for me, is to prepare yourself. So study like you're supposed to study. Studying, you'll never stop studying if you're in a field like this, because you're dealing with the central nervous system. We would never figure out all the nerve connections, all the nerve endings, how the human brain works. So it's an ever-growing field. So you have to keep studying. Stay on top of your game. Be on your A game. Study all the time. Work hard in school so that when you get out, you can go into any career field you want to. So just dedicate yourself. Pick something you like and go with it.
You just gotta go. You just got to commit, and you got to really be persistent and
be flexible. Be flexible.
Exactly.
Plan A doesn't work out, go with plan B. Plan B doesn't work out, plan C, D. Like, life is ever changing. Nothing is promised. Nothing is permanent. So just be flexible.
1000%. So with that being said, when I hear neurophysiologist, I'm thinking crazy big time. Like, you in there with the hooks and the pins, just in their heads, just making their leg kick or whatever. But outside of my foolishness, what would be one misconception that people have about your career?
One misconception that I come across that is very often is I get surgeons who absolutely 100% agree with what we do and the information that we provide for them, or they're on the opposite side of the spectrum where they think we are just totally useless. I get surgeons who, I've been doing this for 30 years without neuromonitoring. Like, why do we need neuromonitoring now? And for me, I believe if you believe in science, you have to believe in neuromonitoring. And so the surgeons that I come across, or the ones I don't come across, I think that they should develop a different attitude as to it's just another second layer of defense and another service that you can offer to the patient to provide the best outcome for them. So it's not necessarily an ego thing where, I don't need a neurophysiologist. It's just, like I said, doing what's best for the patient and making it a standard of care.
So last question here that I wanted to ask you, and just clarify for everybody out there, as a neurophysiologist, what did you need to get any specific certification or testing to do so? Or were you just able to do that right out of your biomedical engineering degree?
No, so I did have to do a certification test. So my background is in biomedical engineering, but I know girls who have, or guys that have backgrounds in zoology, some that are just biology majors, but we all, yes, zoology, yes. But when you think about it, animals, they have a central nervous system too. So, it's not exactly the same as a human, but they still have nerves, they still have connections, they still have spinal levels, they still have all that stuff. And so if you have the basic biology down, all of that background, that's just the foundation. And so before I became a certified neurophysiologist, for a year, I had to train and actually do surgeries with a supervisor. And so once I reached a certain case level, I had to get a certain amount of cases, have a certain amount of study hours. And then I studied for about 3 months. And I took CNIM, which is the board that we have to pass in order to become a certified neurophysiologist.
Okay, great. I feel like this has been probably the craziest discussion I've had thus far, because I'm just thinking, I just keep picturing you just sitting in the OR reading these diagrams like, hey, don't touch that. Don't do that.
Depending on what test that we run, I can see real-time feedback. If he takes a nerve and he gets to doing that to the nerve, I can see it in my data. If he clamps off a blood vessel and I start to lose blood flow to a limb, I can see that in my data. I can see. You'll be surprised. And it seems like, it's just graphs. You just read the graphs and data that's coming in. It's it's crazy when you think about it.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's so interesting. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. I want to thank you again for coming on here. I really appreciate you sharing your professional journey with the platform. And I know there's going to be a lot of youth out there that will be super interested in what you do and look to learn more about it and then try to follow in those footsteps. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. There's not a lot of people that know about it. When I went to Rose and I was looking for jobs to look into, there was no such thing as a neurophysiologist that we were introduced to. And so I absolutely want to go back and just make sure that they're aware of the different fields that are available to us, as well as younger kids that have options. They want options. So Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So is there any last minute statements or questions that you have for me or shout outs that you want to give?
I want to give you a shout out. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Thank you
I appreciate
for
that.
this production that you are doing. Thank you for, it's just amazing. So thank you for putting this together, and thank you for all the other people that you have interviewed, everybody you will interview, and just thank you.
Well, you are very welcome, and I hope that this helps everybody. And as always, I'm gonna look to the camera here and talk directly to y'all watching and say, make sure you like, you comment, and you subscribe to this channel. If there's anybody you want me to talk to, any careers that you're interested in, or people that you suggest that I reach out to, I will do the work. I will get on LinkedIn and I will hunt them down, and I will try to talk to them and get them on here to give you guys information, because I feel like this should be free. So with that being said, this has been another episode of the Black Professionals Project. I want to thank Candace, again, my guest. And with that, we are out.